Okay, so in the year 2022, there have been a lot of great smartphones, be it the iPhone 14 Pro or the Pixel 7 Pro. Even other brands like Moto and Vivo have been in great form. But when it comes to choosing the most capable phone of the year, there's just one phone that comes to mind. That's the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. With this phone, Samsung has combined the best of its S series, like bigger battery and better cameras, with the best of its Note series, like the S Pen, a bigger display, and its iconic boxy design. I've used this phone since the day it launched as my daily driver, and I've really enjoyed it. But it's definitely not perfect. So in this video, I'll try to cover all its capabilities, areas where it still needs improvements, my wish list for S23 Ultra, and finally, I'll also try to answer whether you should wait for the S23 Ultra as it is just around the corner, or you should get the S22 Ultra for cheap. So without any further ado, let's get started with the video. Okay, starting with the design, this thing looks absolutely stunning, at least in my opinion. The iconic boxy design, the curved screen, the camera rings without a camera bump, and the mix of matte and glossy finishes, all of it is done very tastefully. It even gets a flat bottom, so the phone can stand on its own. However, it still does wobble on a flat surface, which makes using the S Pen a bit tricky. But if you're using a case, it's not an issue at all. Coming to the build quality, this phone is definitely up there with the best. It feels very premium and well made. It gets an aluminum frame and Gorilla Glass Victus Plus on both the front and back. While these materials make it quite durable, they also make this phone quite slippery. So I definitely recommend using a case with this phone. Here is my video of some of my favorite cases for this phone. In terms of weight and dimensions, this is definitely a big and bulky phone, but with all the things that are packed inside it, it is definitely not a surprise. In fact, it is quite impressive how much stuff they managed to pack inside a phone of this size. Fortunately, it is also IP68 dust and water resistant, so it can handle being underwater up to 1.5 meter or 5 feet of depth for 30 minutes. However, this is not as impressive as the iPhone, which can manage up to 6 meters of depth for the same period of time. Coming to the display, again this phone has one of the best displays in the market. This comes as no surprise as Samsung makes the best smartphone displays, not just for its own phones, but many other phones including the iPhones. The display specs are obviously top notch, but you have to experience this display in person to appreciate how good this display is. One pro tip, go to the settings, advanced features, and turn on video brightness. This helps enhance the HDR capabilities of this display. It obviously supports high-definition video playback with HDR on all the video streaming platforms. However, it doesn't support the slightly superior Dolby Vision standard as it is a rival to Samsung's own HDR10 Plus standard, which this phone supports. Next is audio. So as with every other flagship, this phone also has stereo speakers. The speakers are quite loud. Check out this audio test. While the sound quality is pretty good, it lacks a bit in terms of bass. This is especially noticeable coming from my previous daily driver, the Note 10 Plus. If you want to know how this 3-year-old phone stacks up against the S22 Ultra, you can check out this video. Coming back to the S22 Ultra, here is a mic test of this phone. This is the audio test of the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. That was pretty good, right? Even the earpiece is pretty loud and clear, so call quality and clarity are top notch on this phone. Coming to special audio features, this phone has a pretty good built-in equalizer. It also supports Dolby Atmos audio, and the best feature is the personalized sound profiles, which tweaks the music based on your hearing capabilities. Coming to one of the most impressive aspects of this phone, the camera setup is just incredible. You get a 108 megapixel primary camera with a big sensor and OIS, an ultra-wide with autofocus and macro capabilities, and 2 zoom cameras, one at 3x, which is also great for portraits, and the other at 10x, which enables insane zoom capabilities. On the front, you get a super impressive 40 megapixel camera with autofocus. That has to be the most versatile camera setup on any phone right now. Coming to image samples, let's start with dynamic range. Here, the camera needs to properly expose the shadow region of these plants while making sure that the outside environment isn't blown out, and I feel this camera did a great job here. Now, going for more extreme shots. In each of these shots, the sun is visible in the sky, but at the same time, the shadow regions are still exposed perfectly without being crushed. That is very impressive. Now let's check out its zoom capabilities. In this outdoor shot, you can see how far the balloon is. There is something written on the balloon, but from this distance, it is impossible to read. So let's see whether this camera can help in this situation. Let's start zooming in. 1x, 3x, 10x. Now you can finally read the text clearly, but there are a few logos below the text. Let's see if zooming in further makes the logos clearer or not. Okay, so at 30x, which is digital zoom by the way, you can see everything including the logos and their colors quite clearly. That's just crazy impressive. And now at 100x, while the photo quality has degraded quite a bit, the text is pretty clear. Now let's see whether this camera can maintain its impressive zoom capabilities indoors. So here in the mall, you can see this yellow stall in the food court, but it's very difficult to see what's written on it. Let's start zooming in. At 1x, you can see something is written in black and red. At 3x, you can clearly see what's written, but let's see if we can find out more detail while zooming in further. Now at 10x, you can see the images below the logo quite clearly. Okay, now at 30x, you can see the lighter text around the logo. This is super impressive. And finally, the 100x shot, not very usable in this case. So from these zoom shots, we can conclude that the zoom capability of this phone is just amazing. Now let's check out a few other indoor samples with some tricky lighting. In each of these samples, there are a lot of bright and dark areas as well as a lot of colors, and I feel the S22 Ultra did a really good job with these photos. The exposure, dynamic range, colors and white balance all looked pretty good. As this phone has a big 108 megapixel camera, it can create real background blur with close-up shots. Here are a few examples. Okay, so this shot is just impossible to replicate with the portrait mode on any phone, as the cutout would be too complex for any AI algorithm. Even these shots would be very difficult to replicate with the portrait mode, so having a bigger sensor definitely helps in these situations. But when the subject isn't too complicated, this phone can generate some really impressive portrait shots with very realistic looking background blur. Even with selfie portraits, this phone does a really good job. The selfies taken by this phone are some of the best, be it outdoors or indoors, be it in good light or low light. This selfie camera never fails to impress. Even with night mode, this phone does an impressive job. While it was good when the phone launched, it has become much better after receiving several updates. The biggest improvement being the clean dark sky with no noise or artifacts. Even the overall texture detail has improved with updates. The indoor night mode shots also look really nice. This camera also has some unique modes which can be very useful at times. So we have the director's view, which lets you see the video feed from all the cameras together, including the front camera. Next is the single take feature, which lets you generate a variety of shots with just a single take. And we also get some AR effects to have some fun. For professional photographers, there is a separate app called Expert RAW, which lets you capture 16-bit RAW images with HDR. These RAW images are massive and have so much room for tweaking in Lightroom. Here are a couple of examples. In this shot, I intentionally overexposed the shot to blow out the highlights, but with just a little tweaking in Lightroom, I was able to recover all of it. Similarly, here I intentionally underexposed the shot to crush the shadows, but again, I was easily able to recover all the shadow detail with a little tweaking in Lightroom. So far, I've been praising this camera system and all its modes and stuff, but there is one issue with this camera which is a bit disappointing, and that's the motion blur caused by shutter lag. These are two clear examples of this issue. In these shots, the background is perfectly sharp, but the subjects in motion are blurry. This can be a big issue while trying to capture kids and pets, as they just don't stay still. I think that pretty much covers the photography side of this camera. Moving to video, this phone can shoot video up to 4K 60 with all its cameras and even 8K 24 with its primary camera. Here you can see the difference between the 4K and 8K footage. In good light, the 8K footage looks really nice, and as you can see, it offers so much more detail compared to the 4K footage. Now this is a dynamic range and zoom test footage at 4K 30. Here you can see the sun and the green landscape all perfectly exposed. So that's good dynamic range. Now zooming into the fountain, here I am tapping on each zoom level, so 0.6x, 1x, 3x and 10x. Back to 0.6x. Now I'm using the slider to zoom in to test the smooth zoom effect. The smooth zoom effect is good but not great. Now this is a stabilization test. Here I am in a golf cart moving on a somewhat uneven road. The golf cart is bouncing around quite a bit, but this video footage looks really smooth even though it is taken handheld without any support. So the stabilization is quite impressive. Coming to low light video, this is where I feel a bit let down. The footage is decent but could have been a lot better. This is the portrait video mode using the front camera of the S22 Ultra. Unfortunately, this is limited to 1080p 30fps instead of 4K, but the video cutout looks pretty impressive. Now this is a 4K 30fps sample using the front camera of S22 Ultra, but this one lacks the portrait effect. So overall, this camera setup is extremely capable, but a few weaknesses like shutter lag and unimpressive night video hold it back from being the best. Now let's talk about the software experience of this phone. Currently, it's running One UI 5 based on Android 13 with December security patch, which is the latest one as on the date of shooting this video. With this phone, Samsung has promised 4 major Android updates and 5 years of security updates, which is just great. It has already received the Android 13 update, so it will still receive Android 14, 15 and 16. With One UI, Samsung has come a long way from its laggy and buggy TouchWiz days. One UI, especially version 5, feels so smooth and polished while offering so many useful features that no other Android skins provide. Things like edge panels, secure folder, pop-up view, DeX mode, good lock, game plugins, and a lot more. Adding to this list are the S Pen exclusive features like screen off memo, magnify, translate, and so on. So obviously no other Android skin can compete with the kind of features offered by this phone. But that doesn't mean One UI is perfect. A basic thing like network speed indicator is missing and you need to install a third-party app for it. Even Google casting is removed from the notification toggles, replaced by Samsung's proprietary Smart View. So you have to go through the long way by going to the Google Home app, choosing the display and then casting your phone screen. Also, even though there is so much customization on offer thanks to Good Lock, basic things like fingerprint and charging animations cannot be changed. All these are minor issues, but I hope Samsung works on these issues, making One UI even better. Now let's talk about the performance, which is perhaps the most controversial aspect of this phone because of the infamous game optimization service used by Samsung to restrict the performance while gaming but unlock full performance while benchmarking. Also, the fact that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is a hothead and not very efficient made matters worse. Anyways, since then, Samsung has provided an option to reach full power while gaming by turning on the alternate game performance mode in Game Booster Lab settings. So that's that. Now before we go into real world performance, let's see what's under the hood. So we get Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, Adreno 730 GPU, 12GB LPDDR5 RAM and 256GB or more UFS 3.1 ROM, but no microSD expansion. In terms of benchmarks, it is quite impressive as far as the peak performance is concerned. Even though this chip runs hot, this phone managed to achieve good numbers even in sustained performance tests. The vapor chamber cooling system used in this phone must have played a big role in achieving these numbers. In terms of day-to-day performance, this phone is buttery smooth. It's way too overpowered for basic day-to-day tasks. Coming to games, casual games like Subway Surfers run at buttery smooth 120 FPS, and with more graphics intensive games like Asphalt 9, you get 60 FPS even at max settings. Coming to fast-paced shooters like Call of Duty and Apex Legends, again 60 FPS is easily achieved even at the highest settings. The only game that gives this phone a hard time is Genshin Impact. The phone gets warm after about 10 to 15 minutes of playing this game, and the average frame rate goes down to around 40, but it stays there and the gameplay still feels quite responsive. So overall, the gaming performance is pretty good. Coming to battery life, this phone packs in an impressive 5000 mAh battery. However, the processor under its hood isn't very energy efficient, so don't expect crazy screen on times. Still, it provides a solid 1 day of battery life with around 6 hours of usage. These are 3 scenarios, first being very heavy use with around 4 hours of gaming and 2 hours of video streaming. In this case, the battery lasted close to 11 hours with 6 hours and 30 minutes being the screen on time and 4 hours being the standby time. Next is the light to medium use where there is around 18 hours of standby time with always on display. This also has around 1.5 hours of gaming and 3 hours of video streaming. The overall screen on time is just under 6 hours, but the phone lasts for the entire 24 hours. And lastly, this is an offline video playback test on flight mode. Here I got 15 hours of screen on time, which is quite good. So overall, the battery life isn't record breaking, but still it is quite respectable. Coming to charging the battery, this is where I'm quite annoyed at Samsung. First of all, they don't provide any charger in the box, even though this is their flagship phone. Secondly, they try to convince us that the charger is removed to protect the environment, even though it is clearly a cost-saving measure. Also, in terms of charging speed, there has been no innovation at Samsung in 3 years. 45-watt charging was first launched with the Note 10 Plus. 3 years later, even the S22 Ultra is still using the same tech. In comparison, most of the smartphone brands have moved to 100 plus watts of charging speed. I really wish Samsung at least provides 65-watt charging and dual battery design with the S23 Ultra, as 45-watt charging is just too outdated. Coming to miscellaneous features, the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner is quite fast and accurate. For me, it works around 95% of the time without any issue. The face unlock also works well, but it is less secured. I also like the new haptic motor used in this phone. The vibrations are crisp but gentle, and it doesn't rattle when placed on a hard surface. Then there is the S Pen. Some people think it is a gimmick, some are die-hard fans. For me, it is a must-have as I really like the precision it provides for taking down notes. In terms of sensors, this phone ticks all the boxes, nothing is missing. Same goes with connectivity. From Wi-Fi 6E to Bluetooth 5.2, it has all the connectivity options. Even the USB Type-C port is a USB 3.2 Gen 1 standard, so you can transfer data to and from your PC in no time. It also has video out functionality for screen mirroring and DeX mode. In terms of networks, it obviously supports 5G, carrier aggregation as well as Wi-Fi calling. Now that 5G is finally available in India, knowing how many 5G bands are supported by your phone is very important. This phone supports 16 bands, which is great. In my house, I get such good 5G speeds which even exceed my home Wi-Fi speeds. Finally, coming to accessories and ecosystem, this is where Samsung stands head and shoulders above the other Android manufacturers. You get premium smartwatches like the Galaxy Watch 4 and 5, premium TWS earbuds with ANC and 3D audio like the Galaxy Buds Pro. There are also smart tags, cool cases, charging stations and so on. So if you want a complete flagship experience with a great ecosystem, Samsung has got you covered. Alright, conclusion time. So as you have seen in this video, this is one of the most seriously capable phone with so many features that no other phone or brand can match. Still, it's not perfect. The slow charging speed, lack of charger in the box, some small camera issues, and some other minor issues hold it a little back from becoming the ultimate flagship smartphone. There is definitely some room for improvement. 3 things that I wish Samsung improves with the S23 Ultra are 1. The charging speed, 2. The shutter lag issue, and 3. Low light performance, especially in video. Coming to whether you should wait for the S23 Ultra or get the S22 Ultra at a discounted price, well, the answer depends on the kind of user you are. If you are a gamer or a camera enthusiast, the S23 Ultra will have some noticeable improvements in these departments, as it is rumored to have a 200 megapixel camera and come with Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which offers a big performance upgrade over the S22 Ultra. But if you just want a premium smartphone, which is great in all departments, but is priced under $1,000 or 1 lakh Indian rupees, this is definitely a great option to consider. Alright, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. Please like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel down below. Thanks for watching.